Welcome, everyone. We've got a few folks that are still trickling in. I'm going to give it just a minute before we kick things off so that everyone gets a chance to join the session, but we're glad to have you all here. All right, it's 2 after, so we're going to kick things off. We see quite a few folks have been able to join into the session today. My name is Amy Green. I am the VP of Sales and Marketing here at Cirrus Insight. I am excited to have you all on our session today. This is an interactive session, so I encourage everyone to take a moment to locate the Q&A module of the Zoom webinar platform. This is where we will accept questions, and also we will respond to some via the chat module, and others we will be happy to take live at the session at the appropriate time. So before we get moving, we're going to talk a little bit about a few housekeeping items before we jump into the presentation. This event is being recorded, so all of you, even if you have colleagues or team members that may have registered and were unable to attend due to scheduling conflicts, everyone who attended or registered will receive the link to the recording after the event. I mentioned the Q&A portion, so just take a moment to make sure that you can locate that. You're welcome to even shoot over a test question if you'd like, just to make sure you've got that squared away, and I'll respond to you. And then we also will have, again, because this is a fireside chat and an interactive session, we're going to be opening it up for that Q&A module so that everyone can ask questions either as we're going along, or we'll also have a portion at the end where we can kind of take those questions and discuss them live as well. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Michael Baldwin. He's our VP of Product, and he's going to take us through the rest of our slides today.
Thank you so much, Amy. Again, thank you to everyone here for being here today and spending some time with us today. This is it's a fireside chat, which is exciting because we're going to go through a bit of content today, which I think is going to be interesting, hopefully interesting for you guys and relevant to what we see as an important topic. But really, we want to use this presentation as a kind of a kickoff or a door opener for some continued conversations. So, we'd really like to hear what your thoughts are about the topic, email engagement. We're going to get into some specifics around pixel tracking and impact of spam controls within the industry. So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you might be experiencing from your campaigns and your email outreach, and things that you may be trying or actions that you might be taking. So just very quickly, in addition to Amy Green, we're going to be joined by Josh Cancone today, who are senior systems architect on the team. And we're going to go through the basics of what pixel tracking is. This is all within the umbrella of email engagement, but specifically pixel tracking, some changes that may be impacting your usage of pixel tracking as an email engagement metric. Some steps, recommendations that you can take to understand the impact of these changes and potentially optimize your email deliverability. We'll talk about pixel tracking just in general, because I think there's some considerations both for and potentially against the technique. So just want to sort of level set there. And then we want to talk about what Cirrus Insight is doing and how we're thinking about it. So that's basically it in a nutshell. We'll go ahead and jump in. The overview here, and really the impetus for having this discussion, is we've been starting to hear a lot of questions and potentially concerns, but really just uncertainty coming in to Cirrus Insight about what email vendors are doing around the use of pixel tracking as an engagement metric. Now, pixel tracking is often used within email campaigns as an indicator of opens for an email to be opened, but it can be potentially an indicator of spam. And in the spirit of trying to protect the end users from unwanted spam, a lot of the big email players like Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, and others have been applying policy changes and then subsequently functional changes in their products that are designed to help their end users be protected from unwanted spam. So this is not new news. This has been happening for some time, and I'll say it is expected to continue. We know it's going to continue. In fact, we know that it's probably going to evolve, get tighter in areas, get more refined in areas, and more targeted in areas. But it's definitely an aspect of the overall service that that these email providers such as Google and Yahoo and Microsoft are providing to their users. What has happened specifically in 2024? And again, it's not like a single event. There have been a number of points of, I would say, policy tightening over the years and new controls, new functionality. And typically we see that those are sort of trickled out, that they're phased into the market. It's not all at once, but during the course of 2024, Google has specifically added some new protections, including some new behavior around pixel tracking. So we want to talk about that. Pixel tracking is a technique. It is an option within Cirrus Insight. It's the what our opens tracking feature relies on. And it's very common. It's used across most of the email automation vendors in the market. So I'm going to hand it over to Josh real quick, who'll explain a little bit more about how pixel tracking works.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. We wanted to give a brief overview of how pixel tracking works, particularly with Cirrus Insight, but generally kind of across most of these tools that are available in the industry. So the way pixel tracking works is kind of simultaneously very simple, but also complex at the same time. Pixel tracking, when you engage email tracking in Cirrus Insight, we typically do two things. If you engage the open tracking, we rewrite the body of the message to insert a small 1x1 pixel into the HTML of the message. That pixel points to our servers. Likewise, when you engage link tracking, we rewrite the links in the body to briefly route through our servers and then onto the original link destination. What this does is when the email is opened, a request is made by the email client, so by Outlook or by Gmail, to download the pixel from us. And what that allows us to do is kind of infer activity that's happening around the email. So a pixel request, for example, would be an indication of an email open happening. Likewise, when a link is clicked, it comes to us. We redirect to the original location. That is an indication of an email link click happening. And this is used for in our application, showing open rates, showing click-through rates, etc. I think Mike, yeah. So what we've been seeing is the email clients, and this has been going on for a while, particularly in Outlook has done this for a long time, is they will not render the images in the email message by default. So that disrupts the ability to detect opens. Gmail has recently started doing a similar behavior. Gmail also has, for a long time, actually routed the image requests through their own servers. And so this limits what we can kind of infer about the activity on the email. We've responded to this in a number of ways in the past. Most recently, we've kind of changed the way we present the data in the sidebar to be more focused on the email itself and not around the individual recipient on the message that may be performing the action. So it's more email focused. Is there an open on the email? Is there a link click on the email rather than who specifically is doing the action? It's an email oriented approach because of the limitations in how much data we can get from this type of activity. And I think, Mike, that unless anybody has any questions, that's good for the overview. You want to take it
Okay,
over?
yeah, great. Yeah, thanks, Josh. Yeah, just a couple other points I wanted to make on what triggers spam protection from the email provider's point of view. Um, highlights that email providers are not targeting pixel tracking, right? Like pixel tracking is a known technique, like I said, and it's generally accepted, but they are trying to help protect against spam. So use of pixel tracking is one of multiple factors that an email provider might use as they might see as a potential indicator, but it's really a piece in a greater puzzle. So most of the email providers will calculate what they consider to be a domain reputation score. And that domain reputation is ultimately what decides what action is taken on emails that come from that domain. So presumably your company's domain, if you're using your own domain for sending, or you might be using an alternate domain for email marketing campaigns. But the domain reputation score is essentially the health of that, and it's going to speak directly to how likely it is for your email to get through to its intended recipient. I just wanted to make the point about the action that Google has recently taken with Gmail for around pixel tracking is that it's sort of defaulting to the presence of a pixel in an email as being an indicator of possible spam, but it is not automatically routing emails with pixel tracking to spam. That's not what's happening. However, if the domain already has a lower domain reputation for other reasons, and there could be other reasons, including the volume of the emails that are being sent from that domain, the content, right, the language, if there's an excessive use of images in the email, there could be a number of other factors that have already affected the domain reputation score, and then the inclusion of pixel tracking could impact that further. What will specifically impact it is if a user, the end user, sees, you can see an example of the banner that would appear in an email. If they click show images, that is good. If they click report spam, that email gets flagged as spam, that gets tagged to that domain, and then that domain reputation score could be negatively impacted. Again, that doesn't mean that as an absolute, it doesn't mean that necessarily all further emails from that domain would be routed to spam, but it will. The more reports of spam from individual end users, the more likely that the domain reputation score is going to go down, and that could impact further routing behavior. All right. So yeah, recipient action is definitely a player in that case. There are some additional considerations around pixel tracking. So like I said, it's an industry standard. It's used by all of the marketing automation platforms, and there's a number of benefits around it. You can get that engagement data very quickly, right? As soon as an email is opened, that data, that action has happened, comes back. It can be used to capture additional data combined with other technologies like JavaScript to even go deeper. But generally, the basics of the time and the date of the open, the location based on IP address, and even system information. So useful information for purposes of targeting from a marketing perspective. You can even do some basic behavioral segmentation based on open behaviors, which can then again lead to improved targeting. And based on what content works, what format works, what timing works, you can really optimize a lot of the tactical campaign decisions within a marketing initiative based on that open data. So it is potentially very useful. I do want to mention just very quickly, there are some additional considerations. I don't want to say controversy, but if you Google around, I'm sure you can find some commentary and opinions on this out on the internet. But because the action that's really being measured here is the loading of that 1 by 1 pixel that Josh talked about, that it's not always a one-to-one match with an email being opened. And as he also described, if we're looking at actions at the email level, that's not necessarily at the individual recipient or individual contact level. So sometimes the data that can come back could be interpreted as being a one-to-one match, and it's not really the case. And that is applicable again across the board. That's a factor of the technology. That's not a factor of any specific marketing automation vendor or email automation provider. There are accuracy challenges both at the org level and I'd say the recipient, the end user recipient level, based on protections that they may have in place. And so that could be technologies used to specifically block the pixel at servers coming into an organization, a customer org or a prospect org, or even the individual end user may have protections in their browser that would block images from loading. So if any of those are true, any or all of them true, that the chance of that data not being correct, right? The email may still have been opened, but without that pixel loading as an image, you're not going to get the data back. There are also data protection regulations, specifically if you're working in Europe and have to conform with GDPR regulations, that there are, in that case, the recipient has to specifically opt in to allow use of pixel tracking as an engagement metric. And then there's a broader question of where I would say where kind of use of this as a bit of a vanity metric, where it's even if the data is 100% accurate, that what are you going to do with it? Like, what is the specific action? Is it actionable data, or is it just a number to measure for measurements purposes? If you don't have a specific action tied to what value that data brings for you or your org, then I would suggest maybe taking a second look at it, whether or not that pixel tracking open measure is really critical for you to have. As with anything, it's kind of like, well, why go through the effort of capturing the data if you don't have a clear outcome or clear set of actions that you're going to use for it? And a lot of times folks don't, it's seen as oh, well, the higher this is, that means the better that this is. My email's performing, but what decisions are you going to base off of that? What specific outcomes result from that number? So just something to think about there. Okay, so what I wanted to get into now is how would you know if it's an issue for your organization? And the best way, again, like I said, the email providers are really looking at the domain reputation score that they calculate for your domain or for the domain that's sending the email addresses. So the best thing you can do is be aware of that. There's a number of paid tools out on the market and sometimes built into platforms. But my favorite is just the Google Postmaster tools. They're free. They're really easy to use. There is some minimum threshold of volume that I think you need to be able to use this effectively. But it's free and open, and you can get signed up and set up on it right away. So I would advise doing that either through Google Postmaster or some other tool as a first step, so you can really see what the state of your domain is, and that's going to be a direct indicator of the risk of your emails potentially being flagged if you do choose to use the open tracking or the opens feature via pixel tracking. Some other things that are maybe slightly more tactical. You can run tests yourself. So send yourself test emails to an email account that's different from your domain, and see if the flag comes up. That would be obviously a clear indicator. But then another way is just to take a look at the data. So if you look at your engagement metrics, look at your opens and links and link clicks and replies over the last few months, as these various policies have been rolled out through 2024, and see if you are noticing a clear decline that doesn't appear to be tied to any other changes in how you were running your campaigns or anything like that. But if there's just a decline in all of the metrics over that course of time, that could be an indicator as well. Lastly, which is very tactical, is to check with some of your recipients if you know any of them and see if they're seeing the flags. But it's a good idea to check. Above all, I would just start with an automated domain reputation assessment tool. So what do you do if it is an issue? Well, the focus here is not necessarily to react and shut off pixel tracking. That's not what we're saying at all. But really, the recommendation is to focus on that domain reputation score, which, as I said up front, is impacted by a number of different things. So aside from the use of pixel tracking, you can positively influence that score by adjusting the cadence of your mailings, reducing your distribution volume, improving targeting, right? Improving the content and the personalization of the messages that you are sending so they're most relevant to the recipients. So it's going to be the least likely to be perceived as being spam, and inclusion of clear calls to action. So it's not being seen as noise. It's not coming in as noise. Other triggers, other kind of spammy elements, and a lot of these are probably obvious for most of us, because I'm sure we've all received these kinds of things, but lots of images, broken links, large attachments, language triggers, so the all caps, the misspellings, the weird syntax, the calls to action that are urgent and panicked in tone, those kinds of things. So just those are probably all obvious, but really it's around simplification, personalization, and relevance of your content. I will say that if you check your domain reputation score and you find it to be low and you want to maybe take more of a drastic move, you can try turning off the opens for a period of time, and then as you want to reintroduce it, to do it in sort of smaller batches, sort of stagger it back in. Again, your domain reputation score might be affected by a number of other things, but if it's not where you want it and you want to take a more decisive course of action, that you can choose to do that. And if you want to do that, there are alternate email engagement metrics that you can look at. Link tracking, which is the measure of click-through, and then reply tracking, which is obviously replies back to the sender, which is really arguably the most true, the most real indicator of email engagement as a reply. But we know that those don't always come as quickly. So just some thoughts on alternative actions. So things that Cirrus is doing around this right now, as Josh mentioned, we've moved from the sort of contact level opens metric to an email level opens metric. We are also investigating a number of other things as potentials. One sort of top of the list is elimination of the dependency between open tracking and link tracking. So right now, in Cirrus Insight, you turn on open tracking and then you turn on link tracking. But that's really more of a workflow or a interface element. There's not a technical dependency between the two. So we're looking at making that a sort of a cleaner, discrete choice, independent choices between those two. As I said at the start of the call, we're really interested in talking to you. We're really interested in talking to users of Cirrus Insight, organizations and end users, and understanding how the Cirrus Insight buyer signals as a whole, and specifically opens, links, replies, how those factor into your campaign planning and decision making. We really like to understand use cases, dependencies, constraints, and how you're viewing the situation around spam controls and email engagement in general. So obviously, we're in product and engineering, so we're looking at taking this information and having it as a direct influence onto our future planning, our roadmap for basically, it could be features, it could be additional analytics, it could be refinement to policies or other changes. But it's really important for us to hear your perspectives, your context, so we can make those decisions as best possible. And then lastly, I want to mention that we are specifically investing from a development perspective in new automation solutions that are going to aid with personalization of content that will directly help improved targeting. So this isn't a commercial for this, but I will say I'm very excited because we're about to move into launch and distribution of a new product, a new solution that we call Meeting AI, which just in a nutshell is able to take from an email address to capture identify a person and an organization, person, company from the email address, and then automatically leverage input of data from various sources and use AI to organize, summarize, and deliver basically research results on the person and the company to a salesperson in advance of a meeting. So pre-meeting prep, pre-meeting research, leveraging AI to do that hands off. So very excited about that. Look out for that, more to come. If you have any interest in talking more about that with the development team, just let me know. I put our product at cirrusinsight.com email up here because that's the best way to get to the product management team. And we're happy to hear from you for any reason, any question or topic. All right. So just lastly, future of email engagement. So where do we go from here? What does this look like in 5 years or 3 years? And just a couple thoughts on this. Again, it's quickly evolving, but I do think we're not going to see any kind of decline in the use of email marketing, right? Even with the advent of lots of other channels like social media and other things, that email marketing continues to have a very high return on investment. And it's fairly universal, right? Most people have email addresses. It's an effective method for new customer acquisition, and the data that you're able to get out of it is generally very good. So I expect we'll not see any kind of decline in practices around email marketing, which then goes hand in hand with from the email provider's point of view. They're in a position where they're just going to have to continue to refine their protections for their end users around potential or suspected spam. So they're already using AI to do that in a more sophisticated, more refined way, which is great. And then at the same time, the email senders can be using AI, and I think we'll see more and more solutions around this use of AI to optimize that targeting, right? To really maximize the personalization, potential interaction in email, but just to establish that connection so that the perception of spam is far off the table from the recipient's point of view. So I think we'll see a lot of AI on both sides of that puzzle, and yeah, a lot more to come. So yep, just to wrap it up, I guess for this piece of it, next steps, I would say again, reiterate, please reach out to us, send us a note. As Amy mentioned up front, the chat is open. If you have any questions or comments you want to put in the chat, you can do that right now. But I think that is generally what we wanted to talk about. Email deliverability is going to continue to change. Focus on your domain reputation as the #1 indicator of risk for your campaign's effectiveness. And if you do suspect any risk, there are alternatives from just using the pixel tracking and opens tracking. And it would specifically be links, link tracking, and reply tracking's features from Cirrus. But most importantly, we'd just love to have a conversation with you. So I think that's it for me. Amy?
Thanks, Mike. It's really great. And I think there were some really good tidbits in there just in general for best practices around how to prevent emails from going into spam and making sure that the recipients that you're intending to get the emails can get them. You mentioned this, I believe, in a slide earlier, but hoping you could reiterate it for the audience here. recommended tool to check the domain reputation. Maybe we can chat that through to everyone
Sure.
that they can have access to that. Um, so
Sure. The one I would lead with is Google Postmaster. So, and if again, if you go to Google or whatever your search engine is and look up domain reputation tools or domain reputation assessment, you will see a litany of different options out there. But for the most part, they're paid. They're paid services. Google is free.
yep. And for anyone, on here who, if their marketing team is already utilizing on the marketing side any kind of automation platform, oftentimes if you're a paid subscriber of those platforms, sometimes they have these kind of tools built into that too. So
That's right.
encourage you to check with your marketing organization and see if they may have some things that you all could utilize as well internally to just help assess and level set on where are you all from a domain reputation score, and helping to leverage any tools that you may already have to do checks and balances there. So as Mike said, the Q&A module is open, has been open. I know a few have been chatting through questions and I've been answering those individually. One of those that I think may be particularly helpful for the rest of the group, this question could be for either you, Mike, or potentially Josh, is, there are various plans, if you will, to Google and Gmail, workspace, versus kind of the, personal Gmail. And does, all of this apply to all of those platforms?
So, Josh, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this too, but I would say a couple of things. Yeah, all of the email providers obviously have their own policies and are kind of working on their own schedule for what protections they're putting in place. But I will say we did see specifically Google and Yahoo partnered together this year around alignment around policies, which is an interesting move. It's an interesting indicator that there's movement towards a sort of common industry standard around this. I believe that if you're looking at Google Workspace, that their policy applies across the board for end users, for end user recipients. I think it's universal.
Yeah, another thing about Google in particular is when they make changes, they tend to roll them out in waves. So you may see a change in behavior in a small set of recipients, or a small set of users. Like they do this across their product suites, as like when they roll out changes in Chrome as well, for example. And then they'll typically grow that group over time until it covers the entire market.
They also, for what it's worth, they're also not usually fully disclosing what exactly they're doing when they roll out a change. So if they do, it'll be more at the general policy level and high level. It will rarely be at the specific technical level. And the reason for that, I think, is they're trying to just, have some level of protection against email senders trying to create workarounds or engineer workarounds around their protections. But it's generally difficult to find out the exact specifics about what they're doing and how they're doing it under the hood. Cool. Or any other questions?
I'm going to leave the Q&A module open for a bit, in the event anyone wants to type in any specific questions that you may have for the product team, while you have their attention. And then I'll just give another call out here that if you all have interest in taking a conversation around this topic or other topics relative to product one-on-one with the team, here's your opportunity to email them at the product@cirrusinsight.com address, and that will give you a direct line to Mike and his team.
Absolutely. No topic too small. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, then at this point, I'd say that concludes the chat. Amy, unless you're seeing anything come in.
Yep, no other questions thus far. So thank you, Mike and Josh, for all of the great insights and information shared today. I want to thank all of the attendees for taking time out to join the conversation today. And again, we will send through the recording link to those that registered and attended. And we'll include this email address in there as well in case anyone wants to connect with you guys.
All right. Sounds great. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate everyone's time.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.